I don't want none, Vader, if you ain't got a lightsaber. There are a lot of undeniable truths in our world. Do bears crap in the woods? You betcha. Does it get cold during the winter? I sure hope so, depending on where you live. Does Electronic Arts learn the wrong lesson from anything having to do with any of their games? Yes, especially when it comes to Star Wars. This report comes to us from the boys over at Bespin Bulletin. This comes from a reputable leaker from a French YouTube podcast by Origami. It says here that they share details on the possible reasoning behind the video game's cancellation. On the latest episode of their show, L'Hebdo, number 15, I don't know how to pronounce anything in French, except, the hosts and journalists discussed an array of topics. Enough of that. One of which was the cancellation of the untitled Star Wars first-person shooter. One of the journalists, Gautals, previously having accurate information regarding the upcoming Star Wars game from Quantic Dream, Star Wars Eclipse, which there may be a French connection there. I'm not one that puts a lot of stock in rumors or, sources tell me. I'm only bringing this because this guy is known to have presented accurate information with regards to Star Wars games in the past. The host says both the Iron Man game and Black Panther game are not visibly concerned. This has to do with EA and the recent layoffs. EA, remain committed partly to Star Wars. She told me this morning, at least on games with lightsabers. Well, that's basically what it is from what I was able to capture. But no, basically from what I was told, internal communications formulated by Electronic Arts, the goal would be to say to Star Wars, yes, but Star Wars without the Jedi, they're not sure it pays off sufficiently compared to what was going to be put in. And of course, they don't just mean the Jedi series of games, they just mean Jedi in general. It isn't that there's a whole lot of detail. We don't have a whole lot of detail going on. This was a brief portion of a segment from a podcast. We don't know. We do know that this Gautaz fellow, or however you say it, forgive me if I'm butchering French here, but we do know that he has sources, that he has presented accurate information before. As far as I know, he's a journalist with actual sources. The thing is that this sounds just like an EA thing to do. If you recall, back when Battlefront 2 came out and their monetization scheme was roundly rejected by the community, and I have a great video on this that's doing really well over on my channel, The 40 Plus Gamer, which is more about the overall gaming scene. This channel is for Star Wars specifically. Galaxy of Heroes style monetization doesn't work for AAA gaming, and especially Star Wars AAA game fans. The launch had major problems because of its monetization practices. When they came out with Battlefront 1, they said, players don't really like single-player adventure games. They really like these larger universes, these open world, these live service. That's where it's really at. So they came out with Battlefront 2 and patterned the monetization after Galaxy of Heroes, and it was soundly rejected. What was the lesson they learned after Battlefront 2? Players don't really want these large live service multiplayer games. What they really want is good, solid single-player story adventures. And so we got Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn. These executives at these gaming companies, no matter what the outcome is, they will take whatever lesson they want to that confirms or absolves their executives of any consequence whatsoever. They will close a studio and fire developers before they ever take any responsibility on their own for any of the mistakes that happen. Or if the market rejects a certain game, it's going to be because of XY reason that makes them feel better about themselves and the job they're doing, and makes their shareholders maintain confidence in the leadership of that corporation rather than actually figure out what was wrong. The developers, like the developers at DICE, Dennis and his crew, they understood the lessons because they were trying to shepherd it through without all the crazy monetization. But alas, here we are. Back in 2020, Daniel Ahmad, EA confirms that Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 have sold over 33 million copies combined. At the time, EA expecting Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to ship between 6 to 8 million units before March 31st, 2020. The sales figures were about 14 million copies for Star Wars Battlefront. Battlefront 2 ended up selling about 10 million over the course of its life, and of course, now that is a downgrade from Battlefront 1, but again, why? Why did it undersell the previous title? It all has to do with the launch. It all has to do with everything that happened over the course of its launch, which obviously a historically failed launch. Its all-time peak, 10,000 players on Steam. We had Jedi Fallen Order surpass 20 million players, but this is after it went on Game Pass on Xbox. So of course those numbers are going to jump up. Jedi Fallen Order expected 6 to 8 million copies. Big amount for a single-player game. But Battlefront 2, even with its failed launch, still sold more. And when it went for free on the Epic Game Store, that player count jumped up because a lot of people took advantage of that. This is, again, while it sold fewer copies than Battlefront 1, this is what I mean about EA learning the absolute wrong lessons from anything it does. And so this quote from this podcast rings true for me because this is exactly what Electronic Arts does. They always learn the wrong lesson. And if you think that the only Star Wars games that you can sell have to have lightsabers, have to have Jedi in them, then you fundamentally misunderstand the Star Wars fan. Look at the critical success of Andor. Look at how much people love that show over things like Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. As much as you love stories about the Jedi, and as much as you love seeing Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor together on screen, as much as you love seeing Ahsoka in live action, I don't think anybody is going to argue with the idea that Andor is fundamentally a more well-crafted show with a lot better writing and a lot more heart behind it. Lightsabers are like visual candy. You cannot seriously sit there and look at the success of Apex Legends and Call of Duty and any number of shooters that are out there and tell me that what we really want is just more games with lightsabers. Now, granted, Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor been very successful and have attracted a lot of players. But even the very good selling Jedi Fallen Order just barely matched Mr. Failed Launch Battlefront 2. You know, it took a lot to convince people to actually give Battlefront 2 a try. For as long as people thought that loot boxes were still a major part of that game, there are people out there now who still think that loot boxes are a major part of this game. The excitement that the Star Wars community has had for the 20-year-old version of Battlefront, the classic collection. And they want to sit there and talk about how, and put out statements how they only want to work with IPs that are going to make them money. So you're still interested in Star Wars games, but only if they have lightsabers? Blows my mind. But it shouldn't, because that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. So anyway, rant over. This was a short one. As frustrating as it is to talk about these kinds of decisions, just thank God that they don't have that exclusive license anymore, that Disney and Lucasfilm pulled that from them. There's another rumor out there about Disney forcing EA to cancel Star Wars projects, and I'm not even going to engage that with a click, the whole anti-Disney, anti-Kathleen Kennedy, anti-everything new, it's so predictable. And they just keep parroting the same stuff. And of course, the failure of Star Wars games is because of Disney. The cancellation of Star Wars games is because of Disney. It doesn't jibe with reality. Disney has very little to do with what individual companies decide to do, except for the fact that they take their money for licensing. You telling me that Disney doesn't want to take EA's money? Like, again, I'm not even going to engage it because it's a dumb premise. Thanks very much for watching, for listening. I hope I've kind of echoed your frustrations and hopefully pointed out that this is just par for the course. This is nothing to be really concerned about. This is nothing to blow out of proportion. It's just par for the course when you're working with EA. This is coming up on the end of the fiscal year. They're just trying to clean things up here. So who knows? But who can say what goes on in the minds of EA executives? It's been like that for years. So, again, this is nothing new. So we're looking forward to 10 days from now, the release of the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, which I have a video just recently released on that. So go check that out. And I will see you next time. No, that's not how we do it. I say, good luck. See you at the rendezvous.